Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, guys. Has anyone here ever had acupuncture before?
No.
Okay, there's a lot of funny things about acupuncture. If you were to see acupuncture done in movies or television, you're going to wind up seeing someone looking as if he's been attacked by a whole army of headhunters with little bow guns. They're going to be covered with needles. Acupuncture is a lot more simpler than that. Actually, let me start at the beginning, the way I normally talk. I have been doing acupuncture for about 30 years. I'm not Chinese, I'm the nice little Italian boy that does acupuncture. And I always say that because, to be honest with you, I thought acupuncture was silly. I don't even like Chinese food, why would I want to do acupuncture? But what happened to me back in my early 20s, I was finishing pre-med, and I had 3 car accidents within 2.5 year period. I was partially paralyzed. The spinal cord wasn't torn, but it was being compressed because of fractures, again, inflammation. Was looking at a laminectomy, having a steel rod being put in my back, and I can't tell you how much I didn't want that. And a friend of mine suggested I try acupuncture. I thought they were being silly, but then a physician suggested that I try it. And it worked so well, I was taking dance lessons at a Fred Astaire dance school within 10 sessions. All right, it worked, but I'm still going to be a medical doctor. I'm all set for medical school. Got accepted to medical school in Italy. I'm dating an ophthalmologist, all ready to go start a new life. And I lose 70% of my eyesight because of macular degeneration. And again, inflammation, poor blood flow. It's something that runs in my family. And I was told to forget about being a physician because I would be blind sometime in my 40s. Great. So I went back to the acupuncturist to see if he had any suggestions, and he said acupuncture doesn't fix anything. It's like, well, what am I doing here? So, well, let me explain what acupuncture does. It's an anti-inflammatory. Inflammation is one of the biggest enemies that the body has. The way acupuncture works, people talk about chi and energy and meridians, and I don't talk about any of that stuff. I'm a little Italian boy from Newark. What do I know about Chinese medicine? But what happens is that if you've ever had an EKG measures that electrical signal that moves in the heart. Because that electrical signal moves, it causes the heart to contract in the right sequence, and that then pumps the blood. An EEG is when they measure that electrical activity in the brain. But that electrical activity is not only in the brain or in the heart, it runs throughout the body. It's in muscle tissue. All internal organs are made out of muscle. So somehow the Chinese were able to figure out over 6,000 years ago, 4,000 years before the pyramids were built, how this electrical system works. And the reason why acupuncture works, and I don't have any delicious samples for you guys to try, but if you want to pass this around, if you take that, please. These are tiny little acupuncture needles. Acupuncture needles are nothing but very thin. Please, they're not hors d'oeuvres. They are, especially if you have a pepper allergy. The acupuncture needles are extremely thin. But what happens is that there are little grooves at the bottom of the needle. The idea is when you put an acupuncture needle into a muscle, not to a nerve, into a muscle, and then turn the needle, the small grooves catch the muscle fibers. You tighten the muscle fibers, you change the resistance. Electrical activity moves by path of least resistance. So what we're able to, it acts like a dimmer switch. You turn it this way, that way, you get that electrical signal, that low-level electrical signal that everybody has to respond. And you can get in touch with different parts of the body by trying to move that electrical signal. Now, ancient Chinese saying, which I made up 3 weeks ago, and it helps if you laugh at my jokes, where the switch is not where the light bulb is. So when I was having acupuncture for my eyesight, the gentleman had me take all my shoes off, my socks off, and I'm thinking, okay, he's Chinese, he hasn't read the chart, he's got me confused with somebody else, or he's an idiot. Well, what happened was he started laughing, and he said, Stephen, do you have a microwave? And I said, great, we got 30 questions. Yes, I have a microwave. He said, where is it? I said, in my kitchen. He said, if you have a thunderstorm and you lose all power, where's your fuse box? I said, in the basement. He said, let me get this straight. For you to get your microwave in the kitchen to work, you've got to go to the basement. For me to get the electrical activity to move better up to the eyes, to improve blood flow, we have to go to the feet. Again, where the switch is not where the light bulb is. And what acupuncture does, it tries to retrain that electrical system. That electrical system sometimes doesn't work well because of stress, because of inflammation, because of trauma, because of scar tissue. Anything that is going to interfere with how that electrical activity runs, the body then will have a response to it. One of the other ways we treat people, because people are often afraid of needles, they came up with this idea about 50 years ago, is to use lasers. Now this may look, I love these things, I feel like Luke Skywalker. But what happens with a laser is that a laser is nothing but a light, and a light is nothing but a frequency. Electrical activity is nothing but a frequency. Some bright person said, well, if that electrical activity is a frequency, what happens if we match that electricity with a laser, which is nothing but a frequency, and the body responds to it? So it's not as if your body sees the light, but that electrical signal is recognized by the body. So for most cases, you can use a laser instead of a needle. The reason why you would want to use a needle is because if there is a lot of inflammation, if there's a lot of swelling, an acupuncture needle tricks the body into making endorphins and antihistamines. It makes the antihistamines because you're actually puncturing the skin. The laser doesn't do that. So a laser is about 70% as effective as an acupuncture needle. One of the other ways of treating people, and when I handed out those little peppers, there are what look like a strip with tiny little dots on it. Those tiny little dots are actually magnets. Magnetism affects the way electrical activity runs. There you go, pass it around again. It looks like just tiny little dots, but what they did was they took tiny little magnets and they gold-plated them. And what you would do is you would put that tiny little magnet, for these magnets, on the ear. On the outside of the ear, there's about 150, 200 different acupuncture points. So a way to affect different parts of the body is by putting a tiny little magnet over that acupuncture point. That magnetism will affect the way that electrical activity runs. Now, again, there are different reasons why people will have inflammation. There's different reasons why that electrical system will not work well. One of the reasons, and the way we diagnose things, by the way, is, and Chinese medicine is very different from Western medicine, as you guys can already see. The way we diagnose is actually by looking at the tongue. And it sounds kind of rude, but if you stick your tongue out at me, I'm going to see what the color is, what the shape is, what the size is. If there are indentations, there's a map of the tongue. Again, how they figured this out, I don't know. But there's about 12 different locations, and by looking at these different locations, we can see how well the lung, the liver, the large intestine, small intestine, pancreas, all these different parts of the body are doing. Now, why is that important? Well, a lot of people have internal medical issues, and acupuncture has been used for thousands of years, and actually acupuncture is, that 3/4 of the world treats people by doing acupuncture in conjunction with Western medicine. Acupuncture isn't a replacement for Western medicine, but it's a nice adjunct, because what acupuncture always does is improve blood circulation. By improving blood circulation, we can diminish inflammation. We can help things like arthritis. Any of the itises, which simply means inflammation, so it's bronchitis, arthritis, colitis, any of the itises. If we can reduce that inflammation and improve blood flow, we retrain the body how it's supposed to work. And then the body often will work the way it should, even if it hasn't worked well for many, many years. The causes of problems in Chinese medicine, the causes of illness, sometimes are physical, sometimes it's dietary. Sometimes it's what we call emotional, and that doesn't mean it's all in your head. But if you have experiences that are repetitive or repressed, that has a physiological effect on the body. If I talk about cannolis, and everybody loves cannolis, and if you're hungry and if you haven't eaten, and I talk about cannolis, you're going to salivate and swallow, and I'll say, isn't that interesting? Here it is, a food that's not even here, yet the memory of it tricked the body into salivating. I was in the supermarket the other day, and this little boy knocked over this box of oranges, and they went rolling all over the floor, and his mother yelled, "Stephen!" and my shoulders went up to here. Now here I'm 57 years old, but it was the exact same tone that my mom used to have when I was a kid. And believe me, I heard "Stephen" all the time. There's a muscle memory. So a lot of times what will happen is that, I had this happen recently. A patient came in, and for the past 2 months she's been just having neck pain, shoulder pain. And we talked about it, there weren't any immediate clues, but then she mentioned it was this time last year that she went into bankruptcy, and all the stress that was involved with it. And she did very well during that time, but now all of a sudden, she's getting all these aches and pains. Aches and pains, muscle spasms, different parts of the body, all revolve around different emotions. Different emotions will cause your body to tighten up in different ways. When that body tightens up in different ways, it affects blood flow. If you affect blood flow internally, that's going to cause organ problems. It can cause problems with the liver, it can cause problems with the intestines. Again, colitis, any type of irritable bowel. If these muscles are tightening up, that's going to cause poor blood flow to different areas. When you get that poor blood flow, again, the body's not going to function as well. So usually, now people will often ask me, is acupuncture curative? Sometimes it can be curative. It depends on what's going on. If there is a lot of scar tissue, if there's a lot of permanent damage, the acupuncture will be helpful, but may not be curative. Because if that electrical signal can't run the way it's supposed to run because of trauma that's been permanently established there, it's going to have a hard time functioning as well as it should. But there are ways of tricking the body into still functioning better than it did. So the number of people want to know how long does it take. What I usually tell people is that give me some, if you're in your 20s or 30s, give me 3 to 5 treatments to see if I can make a difference. If you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, I may say give me 6 to 8, depending on how long the problem has been going on. But I tell everyone, if I can't get the body to respond relatively quickly, within somewhere between 5 and 7 sessions, the odds of it working are dropping, at least the odds of me helping are dropping. And I tell everyone that I'm trying to get into heaven, and you can't get into heaven by trying to nickel and dime people. You can't get into heaven by selling people stuff that they don't want, don't need, or doesn't fit. So the acupuncture, I know after 30 years experience, has a high success rate. A lot of times you'll see an improvement within 5 to 7 sessions. How long it'll take will depend on what the issue is. If you have chronic inflammation going because you have a poor diet, you're going to have to change the diet in order for the body to respond better. If you're a carpenter, if you're a plumber, and you're always having these repetitive motion problems, you're going to have to do things in a different way. Carpal tunnel is a nice example. I help carpal tunnel patients all the time. But if they continue to do the things that cause the problem in the first place, it's going to come back. Again, most of the problems that people have are because of repetitive injuries that they're constantly doing, whether that be dietary, the food that they take in, or the stress that they're always involved in. But acupuncture is a great way of trying to retune the body, to get the body's electrical signals to run the way they're supposed to run. And if you do that, the body usually, even if you're in your 70s or 80s, can enjoy a lot better health than you would have had without it. So, any questions about off the top of your head? Yes,
You mentioned bronchitis. It cures bronchitis.
It's very helpful for bronchitis. Any of the itises, again, itis is just inflammation. So if you trick the body into making antihistamines, if you trick the body into making endorphins, and if you can reroute that electrical signal to run the way it's supposed to run, you'll have fewer episodes of things like bronchitis. If the bronchitis is being caused, though, by, let's say, chronic sinusitis, if your sinuses are constantly dripping, which is causing inflammation in the bronchioles and the bronchioli, then what we would need to do is wind up treating the sinusitis. The nice thing about acupuncture and the way acupuncturists see things, they really see every part of the body as being interconnected. And there are issues, very rarely will it just be one issue. And that whole symbol of yin and yang, that little circle with the half black, half white, simply means that something will turn into something else. So again, what we do as an acupuncturist, we try to figure out what the root of the problem is, not just a symptom. Bronchitis can be just a symptom of what another issue that's already going on. The nice thing about acupuncture is that you can treat more than one thing at a time. Any good acupuncturist, let's say if you had bronchitis, is not going to just treat the lungs. He's going to wind up seeing, well, where's all this mucus coming from? So he is going to investigate other parts of your body, even your digestion, to tell you the truth. If your body is making a lot of mucus, a lot of phlegm, then there's dietary issues also going on. So in order to help the lungs, you may have to treat the stomach and the spleen. Again, it's a whole system that we put together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. You just have to find the right pieces so it forms a whole picture.
Are there any side effects?
There are 3 side effects of acupuncture that I talk about. It's possible to get small black and blue. We don't needle into arteries, we don't needle into veins, we don't needle into nerves, but you could get a small hematoma, a small black and blue about the size of a pea. Now, people who are on heparin or Coumadin still get acupuncture all the time because, again, we're not needling into arteries or veins. It's possible to be sore and achy, even where I didn't put the needles. Again, because we're trying to get that blood flow to move the way it's supposed to, but not necessarily just where we put the needles. Other parts of the body may be a little sore and achy the next day. The third side effect, which from a lot of my female patients I always find the most interesting, is that if you, let's say I'm treating something like endometriosis, a lot of inflammation in the uterus. What happens after 2 or 3 treatments is the husband will call me and say, what the hell did you do to my wife? What's the matter? She's yelling at me. What do you mean she's yelling at you? So ever since she's been getting acupuncture, she comes home, she picks a fight with me. And the wife will come in and she'll say, what's happened? I'm not taking any grief or garbage from anybody. I used to be this quiet, submissive person, And now, as soon as somebody annoys me, confront them immediately. That will be the third side effect of acupuncture. That'll, again, if the problems are repetitive or if they're repressed, and emotions are nothing but electrical signals. When you start doing the acupuncture to get these electrical signals to move right, people are less prone and less likely to repeat those things that put them in that situation in the first place. So it's common when you do acupuncture that if there's an emotional basis to things, if you had an attorney who gave you a hard time, if you went through a divorce 10, 20 years ago and you're still having issues with that, it's not uncommon for those emotions to come up because those emotions have nothing but electrical signals that have plagued the body in different areas. So those are the three basic not contraindications, but side effects of acupuncture. All right, guys, thank you very much. I appreciate it.